I would literally lay my hands on my head and pray that I would not lose my mind. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, the best place for singles who are ready to find love. In today's video, I just want to talk to you about how forgiveness can heal a broken heart. Now, you may say, what does that have to do with being single? But the thing is, whatever is going on in your heart can affect your life. Have you ever seen a guy? He's fine, he's successful, he's charming, but he has no real respect for women? His heart issue is showing. Or maybe it's a female, and she just seems to have everything going on in life. Everything is just set, but she's just not happy. Her heart issue is showing. So it's the very same way with us. When we are hurt, when we feel wronged in some way, we run the risk of our heart issue showing up in other areas of our lives. As some of you may know, if you've read my story on Instagram, I was married, and 3.5 years later, I became separated. And as these things go, it was a very difficult time for me. I was walking around hurt, angry, and ashamed all at the same time. I felt deceived. I wanted revenge. I wanted justice. But to make matters worse, I felt like I had a recording of every unpleasant thing that had been said to me on repeat in my mind. This began to affect my mental health. I mean, there are times when I would have to pause just to scream. I remember there was this time, actually I used to drive for Uber for a period of time. And I was driving. Thankfully, I didn't have any customers in the car at the time. But I was driving, and I just kept hearing, the words, the negativity, just on and on and on and on in my mind. And I was just like, oh my goodness. So I had to pull over. I found an empty parking lot, and I pulled over into the parking lot. And I grabbed my steering wheel. I just looked around and I screamed. I mean, I've never heard that sound come out of me ever before in my life. There are other times where I would literally lay my hands on my head and pray that I would not lose my mind. I remember at the height of the turmoil, somebody asking me, out of concern, what can I do to help? How can I help you? And the first thing that came out of my mouth was me, him, dark alley, baseball bat. And I absolutely meant it. I mean, there were so many emotions to process. But as a result of that, it just left me feeling like a shell of my former self. I mean, I'm typically optimistic and I would say, like a happy person. But that was not me during that time and season, which is understandable. But I just knew that that's not where I wanted to stay. I didn't want to live in a place where I would just be hurting and broken continuously for the rest of my life. So I would pray. I prayed that I would stop hearing the recording in my mind. And the thing is about it, it was like I prayed and it stopped that same day. I was like, I was shocked. I don't think I've ever had a prayer answer that quickly. But I was so thankful because for the first time I felt like I wasn't losing it. And then I prayed that for my anger. I prayed that I would just not be constantly angry anymore. And I started to see that gradually taper off. And then I prayed that I would forgive. And actually, the reason I prayed that I would forgive is because God told me. I mean, I know he says in his word, but he told me. He was like, "You need to forgive." And I mean, forgiveness is a word. It's a nice idea until you have to do it. And I felt like I didn't know how to do that. I felt like I did not know how to start. Like, how do you go from being so hurt and angry to forgiving? I just felt completely unable to know even how to begin that process. So I prayed and I left it. And there were times that I would feel okay. I mean, I didn't have the recording in my mind anymore. I didn't feel constantly angry. So I just felt like, you know what? God is working with me on this forgiveness thing. And I was like, okay, this is going to be a process. I can work with that. It's understandable. Then one day, I was at church and the preacher was preaching a message on forgiveness. And he started doing an illustration where he had a long rope, a yellow rope, and he said, this rope is going to be passing around, and anybody who feels like they have any hurt or anything that they're carrying, that they need to forgive, join the line, grab onto the rope, and we will, meet at the front and, we'll pray. Well, I mean, I knew that I had asked God to help me forgive. I knew that, he was working with me on forgiveness. And I was having a really good day. I wasn't having any feelings or anything. So I thought, oh, this is really sweet that, he's doing this. And, we're just going to be praying for all of the brethren who need something, to be healed of something. And I'm just going to be, cheering them on and supporting them and praying with them that they would get the healing that they need. The rope starts moving. And then as it started approaching the section that I'm sitting in, I found myself getting irritated. All of a sudden, I was just irritated, like, oh, why is this taking so long? Is this even necessary? But as the rope passes me, I say to myself, but if you're healed, why are you upset though? So that was revelation. That lifted me out my seat. And now I had to go catch up with the line of the rope people and grab onto the rope. But you know what? It was so humbling. I felt exposed. I felt ashamed. I felt like I had cried enough tears and people had seen me cry enough tears, and I was just tired. Like, I was just done. Eventually, we made our way around the congregation and we got to the front. And as soon as we get to the altar, I raise my hands to just start praying. I'm thinking, I'm just going to be like, Lord, thank you for this opportunity. And, I know you're working on me to heal me. And I just thank you that you're going to complete that work in your own time. Amen. But as soon as I get there, God says to me, pray for him. So I'm upset now because I'm here to pray for myself. I'm the one who's hurting. I'm going through some stuff. I'm here to pray for my healing. He can pray for himself. And I mean, the thing is about it is because I guess I felt just tired of being the bigger person, because throughout the course of the relationship I felt like I always had to be the bigger person. I had to be the person who was initiating reconciliation. So I was just like, enough already. I'm good. I'm not praying for you. I'm praying for me. That's it. But no, God continues to speak. He says, I want you to pray that I would bless him. I want you to speak good things over him. So now I'm just bawling. I'm bawling because how do you argue with the God of the universe? And yes, I want to argue with the God of the universe, and I don't want to do what he's telling me to do. I want to straight up pout now because I'm mad. Negotiating with God in my mind. I'm like, you know what? You told me I need to forgive. I've been praying about forgiveness. I'm not as angry anymore. And I just feel like you're working with me on this process of forgiveness. So I don't see what I need to, bless him. That's a lot to ask of anybody. So here comes the clincher. So he says to me, you were okay with your version of forgiveness as long as you were able to transfer your need for vengeance to me. So you were like, you know what? I'm going to forgive him because vengeance is mine, says the Lord. I will recompense. So you can forgive him, but you're just waiting for the other shoe to fall in his life. And he says, I want you to let go of the need, the desire for vengeance. Just bless him. So I sucked it up. I knew that if I was going to do this, I didn't want to do it begrudgingly. I was either going to be sincere or I just wasn't going to at all. So I started thinking about how I would bless him if I genuinely cared for him, without any hurt, without any anger. How would I bless him? And so then I started putting those words together. And it felt like with every word of blessing that came out of my mouth, there was this weight that just lifted off of my chest. And I felt just more and more free. So it just gave me courage to just continue to just release these words of blessing. And it just freed me to be able to pour out everything that was in my heart. The really astonishing thing that happened though was the next morning when I woke up, and I just knew that every single residue of ill feeling, ill will was just gone. I don't want vengeance anymore. I don't want justice anymore. I'm just good. I'm just good. Which was so weird, but so wonderful. Even now, the entire process literally feels like I'm telling somebody else's story. It's like I'm looking through a haze at someone else. Like, even though I lived through this experience, it doesn't feel close to me anymore. It feels like I'm relating a story that I read in a book. So the reason I shared this was because I know that there are people who are never married, separated, divorced, widowed, maybe even some married people that may see this video. And I have learned that it is very important to have a healthy, loving, thriving marriage, because a bad marriage can negatively affect your physical and your mental health. So whether it's a romantic relationship, a parent, a child, some situation or circumstance that has hurt you, and you know that you're still hanging on to it, I'm just going to encourage you to totally just forgive and let that go, because you don't want it affecting your life any more than it probably already has. I mean, if you're watching this video, it's more than likely because you're single and you want to get married. And marriage is so sweet, when it is done right. A heart that is ready for love and for marriage is a heart that can be vulnerable. I mean, your spouse, your partner will be the closest person to you, or ought to be the closest person to you in this life. So what makes it wonderful is when you can be vulnerable with that person and just express love in a very pure and untainted way. Well, that's it for today. Join us for the next video. Make sure that you take the time to like this video. If I have said anything that stands out to you that you can relate to, leave a comment down below. Let us know what stood out to you, and hit subscribe so that you will not miss new videos as they're posted. Love yourself, love others, and be blessed.